Good afternoon, CUBE community, and welcome back to Barcelona, Spain. My name's Savannah Peterson. You're watching our live 4 days of coverage here on theCUBE, joined by Dave Vellante. Dave, I have an interesting opening question for you. Have you noticed that everyone dresses so sharp here?
Oh yeah, we're in Europe. You gotta,
I know,
you gotta
it's such a
dress up.
different...
I feel like I'm dressing down. Yeah.
Well, you look great, and the reason I'm bringing it up is our next guest is dressed so impeccably well that I couldn't help but notice. Vijay, thank you so much for taking the time to hang out with us.
Thank you, Savannah. Thank you, Dave, and thanks for the compliment.
Yeah.
I do appreciate you guys having me today, and it's always a pleasure for us to talk to you all. I know we did this last MWC when Charlie came here, and I had a wonderful conversation with you all, and here we are following up a year on.
It was the surprise of last year's show.
Okay.
When we had Charlie on, because he was a first timer on theCUBE. And the interview was so good, it was epic. It's still up today. I go back and reference it quite frequently. So go to MWC 2024 on thecube.net to see that interview. It's a great educational overview of Broadcom, because people didn't really understand Broadcom. I think they're starting to realize, Wall Street clearly realizes that, oh wow, Broadcom does a lot of really hard things that with great IP and drives value for customers, invests in R&D. Well, I think we debunked a lot of myths on that interview. But give us the update, what's new in the last year? A lot has transpired.
A lot has transpired, Dave, you're absolutely right. I think before I recap, I need to specifically talk about one thing, which is when Charlie met you all last year, he talked about a specific acronym. Do you remember that? OSP?
Yeah, open,
scalable.
Wait.
Scalable.
Open, scalable, and performant? No.
Power efficient.
Power efficient, right.
Yes.
Open, scalable power, of course.
Yes,
Yeah,
open, scalable, power efficient. This has been our mantra. Sort of pervades all of our product decisions, especially with respect to AI infrastructure. We've been doing that. And I think in the last 12 months, I would say we've delivered to this vision, and we've also delivered to the product promises that we've made. Across all of our infrastructure products, we talked about 5 or 6 product lines. There's XPUs, there's Ethernet, PCIe, optics, and foundational technologies like SerDes and DSP. We've done quite well. We've successively prosecuted those roadmaps the last year, had tremendous success.
I never really understood the importance of SerDes until I started digging into it, serialization, deserialization. It's like a secret sauce that you guys have. The word is you have the best SerDes in the business. Why is that so important? Talk about the underlying technology there and why that's so critical.
And more than the underlying technology, I think fundamentally it's really the interconnects that keep the AI infrastructure going. And SerDes is very critical in terms of ensuring that you have these high-speed data links, and these high-speed data links have to work at extremely good signal-to-noise ratio, right? So
yeah,
it needs to make sure that your signal gets across from one end of the link to the other, despite all the noise that you would see in the electrical circuits. This is true of this fundamental SerDes technology. Now these interconnect technology has to go into our XPUs, it has to go into our Ethernet devices, into PCIe, so every piece of connectivity silicon that we do requires the SerDes. And the quality of the SerDes makes those products that much more impactful and valuable.
And the fundamental premise that we talked about last year, which Charlie explained so well, was, you got GPU, CPU, I would call it the XPU, I think he called it.
Mm-hmm.
And all those PUs have to talk to each other, all
That's
the XPUs. And the networking in between is critical, and that's hard, and you guys do it really well. And everybody needs that with high bandwidth memory. The importance of that just escalates. And so we're just at the beginning of this new data center cycle. At Financial Analyst Day, you guys hinted that there are people working on million GPU clusters. We've seen hundreds of thousands now with XAI. So that was you guys made that call last, I think it was February or March.
March.
And now we're seeing that whole vision come to fruition. So we're just getting started though.
We're getting started, and again, I mean, as I talked about, SerDes is important, but it's equally important that other pieces of our technology are actually prepared when that happens. And this includes what we would do on the Ethernet front, what the XPUs need to be equipped with, for example.
That's a great point, yeah.
For example, I mean, you asked about what we did in the last 12 months. Back in December, we announced 3.5D advanced packaging for XPUs. We call it Extreme Dimension System and Package. Now, if you look at the XPUs today, they integrate multiple compute dies. They integrate substantially more HBMs, I/O chiplets, and they all have to come together in a relatively small area, and that would require us to go focus on advanced packaging. That's something that we've done very, very well. We've tried to keep ourselves ahead, and that's become one of our differentiators. In December, we launched 3.5D, which we believe would be the advanced packaging of choice going forward for these XPUs, which are extremely, extremely large dies.
I got a question for you. Speaking of that whole end-to-end product line, and because we are here at Mobile World Congress, mobile phones being probably the most ubiquitous edge device that's out there and connected, what are y'all doing in the edge space right now?
Well, it's a great question. Thank you, Savannah, for asking that. So, I mean, so far we've always talked about the Broadcom infrastructure play in AI, but we do have an equally interesting play in the edge as well, and it primarily comes from our broadband access offerings. So we have, I mean, in the last 12 months, again, we had a couple of very interesting announcements that we made in the edge AI space. One is we announced, together with Comcast and Charter, that we're developing the first unified DOCSIS 4.0 chipset with AI/ML capabilities in there. So it has a neural engine that is capable of supporting a lot of the AI use cases in your home. Think of your broadband gateway as being your edge device in your home, which, okay, you could think about doing video processing for a great video experience. You could think about presence detection, or making sure that your Wi-Fi and IoT connectivity is great. So all of these in an edge AI platform in your home. We've not just done that. From an edge perspective, we've made sure that the access network, the edge access network, actually has neural capabilities, whether it is our DOCSIS 4 offering. So we've integrated these neural engines in not just the modems, but also in the smart amps and nodes. Or you take our PON devices, our 50 gig PON devices today, they have neural engines packed, so the two sides of the link, the OLTs and the ONUs, they have the neural engine as well. So think about what it can actually offer to the service providers and the operators. The network management capabilities, the power management capabilities, the possibilities are endless. And so it sort of expands your view of what you would consider the edge. Edge is not just about the phone here, and the use cases that you'd have, let's say, manipulating your photos or coding on your computer without the cloud. But the way I look at it is, maybe in the extreme, edge is everything compute that happens outside of the data center. And that's something that we would play in.
I love that as a very simplified definition, and I think I'm probably going to steal that from you from time to time. I promise. Yeah.
So when you see something like DeepSeek, our reaction was great news for the edge. If this lowers the cost of doing AI, more people are going to do AI. And I wonder how you think about it and what the reaction was inside of the brain trust at Broadcom when you saw DeepSeek. What was the response, and how do you think it will play out over time?
I mean, overall, I think it's a positive development from the perspective that we see it rather as an acceleration of AI towards, call it AGI or ASI. That's where, I mean, all of these efficiencies are required in order for the world to accelerate there. That means, there's going to be consistently more investment in the AI area. It has nothing to do with somehow reducing compute, for example. It has everything to do with accelerating towards that journey that we're all taking together, and the journey that our kids will live in another 20 years. That's the world they're going to be in.
So you're a parent?
Yes.
How old are your kids?
12 and 8.
Oh, wow. What do they think about AI?
Oh, they are absolutely flummoxed, and I take
Great
my time
vocab word
to
for that.
actually train them on AI. Schools have a very irrational way of dealing with AI today because they just don't know what it is. It's the fear of unknown. But I know that my kids are going to live in an AI world where they absolutely need to know how to use the tools. So I teach them today on what they can do with it at home for their homeworks or for their tests. For example, my daughter no longer touches her textbooks. So I download each of her chapters as PDF, feed it into Notebook LM, and that's what she hears in her drives. So
Wow.
it's an audio book, and that's how she learns.
Textbooks
and that's how
were
it should be.
such a rite of passage when you had that big backpack full of books when we were
That's
when we were
right,
younger.
that's how it should be.
Staying there just for a second, what do you hope that AI does for your kids as they're adults? When you mentioned 20 years as a demarcator, where do you hope we are then?
It's going to change the way they do things, right? At home and at work. I mean, my son always thinks of, he says, Dad, when I grow up, there are going to be flying cars. That's how he sees it, right? So as an 8-year-old. But, I mean, and I give this analogy to everybody. When I was in my high school, there were calculators, but we'd have to use those log books to do log calculations. I don't know if you've ever encountered those paper log books. There was a calculator right beside me, but no, I could not use it.
Yeah.
I had to use this log book to compute the exponentials. I don't use that today.
I had to use slide rule.
There you go.
In my day.
So
In chemistry class, they made us use a slide rule. I'm like,
Oh,
this is so stupid.
God.
So we're using laptops, computers, phones, and that's what I want my kids to be geared towards.
Yeah.
They need to be ready for the possibilities in the future, not so much get bogged down by the drudgery of today.
Well, like you said, there's sort of, a lot of high schools and grade schools are misguided. I remember when my kids were younger, they wouldn't allow them to use Wikipedia. I'm
Oh,
like,
yeah.
are you kidding me? But you'll let them use an encyclopedia? Wikipedia is better. And
Yeah.
now you're seeing the same thing. But eventually it's inevitable.
Yeah.
AI is going to be everywhere, and you're not going to want to, like Ray Kurzweil says, you're not going to want to give up the tools and go backwards and be less smart. AI makes you
Or
smarter.
less efficient.
Or less efficient, right?
Yeah.
So it's funny how the initial reaction sometimes is negative, but then the wave comes and it's
Well, I think we
inevitable.
get scared of the unknown. I mean, I think that's kind of natural. And when you have to retool, anytime you're retooling, whether that's as a human or a company or whatever,
That's right.
there's a bit of anxiety that goes into that. What are some of the trends you're seeing? I mean, being at Broadcom, you get to see the application of this across verticals, across everything. What are some of the trends you're noticing? And then also, if you could wave a magic wand and all of a sudden the entire community knew something about AI or something about where we're off at, what do you wish you could teach them magically?
Okay. So there's one thing that I want to teach them, and this is something that I learned actually as late as yesterday. So I've been trying to, for the longest time, think about a great analogy for edge AI versus infrastructure. And I've been raking my brain on how I could simply explain it, and yesterday I learned it, of all people, from a doctor that I talked to.
Go figure.
It was fascinating. This was Dr. Gao Yujia from NUSD in Singapore. He is using AI for his hospitals and whatnot. And he had this splendid explanation that compared edge and infrastructure to your brain and the spinal cord.
Ooh.
And I never thought of it that way. Think of it, right?
Yeah.
So when you go touch,
It's like my brain NPU
when
analogy.
you go touch a hot object, your neural sensors drive your information back to the spinal cord and to the brain. The spinal cord first does the processing and lets you know, hey, take your hand off.
Yeah.
The information goes back to the brain nonetheless, and the brain then triggers the pain sensation. So you have reflex that's driven by the spinal cord, and then you have the brain that's doing the ultimate processing. This is what, in my mind, it's just spectacular. I was bowled over because it's a very simple explanation of infrastructure and edge AI.
I think it's awesome. I've been comparing, I love that you just brought this up, and shout out to your doctor. I've been comparing the AI PC to the human brain a lot, and the different parts of the brain and what that could be. And I love the spinal cord. I've been using hands as the edge devices in this body analogy that I've been toying with wanting to draw. But I love that you just said that, because that's exactly what it is. And what's interesting about that too is the spinal cord is actually trying to optimize the system, right? You know, your nervous system is trying to balance you out. That's sort of what we're trying to do with data and all this other stuff. I'm with you. I'm now drinking the Kool-Aid.
It complements you. And by the way, the spinal cord analogy to it is not just your phone or your laptop, but in the enterprise case, it's an on-prem server cluster that is on the premise, right? Which is doing instant processing. Same hospital analogy, right? I mean, a patient, you're not going to wait for the patient's vital you need to respond to the patient's vital quickly, and you do that with on-prem compute, not so much going back to the data center.
Did you see the movie, The Substance yet?
No, I have not watched it. It was
kind of freaky. Did you see it?
No.
It's the Demi Moore.
The spinal cord's a pretty key piece of infrastructure in that movie. I won't spoil it for you. And I didn't. Of course, we didn't see the Oscars last night because we were over here. But
I didn't even think about that.
Honora won it all. The soft porn flick won all the awards. I wasn't a fan. I don't know if you saw Honora. Did you see Honora?
No, I didn't.
You didn't see Honora? My family watches this. My wife is a big
film.
Oscars fan. So she makes sure that she sees all the movies beforehand. So I'll watch many, but anyway, I digress. But the key was the spinal cord was a key piece of infrastructure in that movie that powered
Way to bring us back there, Dave.
Powered the brain. Right?
Yeah. Well, it is. And when you think about it, I mean, there's so much data in all the different parts of our body, whether that be our fingertips or whatever, and it's all coming back through that central core, that Ethernet pipe of the spinal cord. Anyway, it's really awesome to think about. Okay, we love having you on the show. We had you on last time. What do you hope to be able to say when we have you on the show at MWC 2026 that you can't yet say today?
That's an interesting question. What would I say? Probably that some of the efficiencies that are being investigated, that are being brought to bearing in the AI world would, hey, I told you so, that acceleration is happening. The AI acceleration is really happening in this year, and you're seeing these million unit clusters, but at the same time, you're also seeing that journey to AGI accelerate. That's something that I'd love to see. I mean, it's also a little bit of wishful thinking, but just to be able to see that acceleration to where we ultimately want to be, that would be fascinating.
All right.
And you guys, I mean, AGI, a lot of debate about what it is, what it isn't. I don't want to necessarily go there. But let's assume something that looks like AGI is coming. Broadcom's a critical part of that. And again, I think people misunderstand, probably still to this day, Broadcom. I think they think that, it's like a zero-sum game between NVIDIA and whether it's Google, Microsoft, AWS doing their own. You guys obviously participate in a lot of custom silicon with some of those companies, or whatever, AMD, Intel. But it's really, it's not a zero-sum game. It's like, it truly is this tide that lifts all ships.
Yes, it is.
So, I mean, Broadcom, almost $1 trillion, it hit $1 trillion market cap. It was significantly lower last year at this time. And so, again, when we hit these cycles, you get a lot of volatility, but when we project out 10 years, these companies are adding so much value. We talked earlier today about agents and agentic and the impact that's going to have. My point is, oftentimes we get caught up in the tech industry because we have valuations, Mag 7, Broadcom, et cetera. But there's also massive value being created by the end customers who are applying AI. And that's where the economy is really going to benefit. And you guys are a fundamental part of that value chain.
And that economy, I mean, again, sky is the limit, and I'm really curious to see how, what sort of applications will come to be. I mean, one of my favorite use cases that I'd love to see in the future is, this device being replaced by something that is more task-based, right? Today we are driven by an app-based device. I'd love to see something that's task-based. I guess agentic you can call it. Mm-hmm. So an edge device that's agentic, that's task-based, that you get to input and output with, not just with touch, but maybe you talk to it and say, hey, I just need to go from here to La Rambla now, how do I do it? I don't have to go into Uber to go hail a cab. It should be able to do that for me by itself, right? Being able to get there with a very different user experience, your personal assistant, your true personal assistant that is with you, that's an extension of you. I think that would be a game changer.
Replace our thumbs and fingers with our voices.
Yeah, NLP, baby.
And to your point about your children earlier, learning through listening, I mean, I have great conversations with ChatGPT and other LLMs.
Even Chris, being blind.
Oh, yeah, accessibility.
Yeah.
I mean, the conversations are wonderful. It's like having David Floyer at my fingertips.
Yeah.
Oh.
That's one way to put it. Wow, Vijay, this has been absolutely outstanding. I look forward to us seeing how that acceleration has manifested itself when we get to chat with you at MWC, hopefully even sooner than that. And congrats to the team. Y'all are doing a great job. We're big Broadcom fans over here.
Thank you, Savannah.
Thanks for making some time. Appreciate it.
Well, thank you both of you for having me. Always a pleasure talking to you all, and I look forward to coming back next year.
Yeah, we look forward to having you. One last thing, do you want to say hi to your kids?
Sure. Vaishnavi, Vyom, hi.
Perfect. All right. Thank all of you for tuning in wherever you might be. We're here in Barcelona, Spain at MWC. My name's Savannah Peterson. You're watching theCUBE, the leading source for enterprise tech news.